Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
At the UPS Store, we have everything to help small business owners be unstoppable. So if you need printing, we'll be the printing store.
The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. The UPS Store locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours may vary. See Center for details.
Maybe that's the issue, is that I don't feel the hope that the ending of this book seems like it's suggesting I should feel.
Yeah. That's the thing, is because, again, I think he just doesn't have power at the end.
Yeah, like he can only change himself.
Yeah.
And like, that's cool and all, but there's a tyrant in the tomb still. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Monster Donut, a literary and historical deep dive into the Percy Jackson series and all of its following spin-offs. I'm Phoebe, a dramaturg and story consultant.
And I'm Emily, a classic scholar-ish.
Today we are wrapping up Trials of Apollo several months late.
Not our fault, it's Disney's.
Literally, if they had just waited one more week.
I know.
If they had stuck to the original schedule, we planned it out so perfectly.
I know. You know what, though? This is good, because we're getting back in the headspace of Trials of Apollo, and then we're going to move on to The Sun and the Star.
Right, yeah.
So, well, if you listened to our last episode, that was also a wrap-up, so you know how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we have compiled a bunch of questions and analyses from you all. Thank you so much if you sent them in. It's always so much fun to get to read them, and I'm not going to lie, some of you're I don't think I've been disappointed by an email yet. Like, honestly, you're all just sending some, like, absolute bangers. I'm very happy that we have all found each other and our deep analytical proclivities. So Phoebe will be doing most of the questions, and then I went back through our episodes on Trials of Apollo, and I wrote down just, like, general themes and things we said we were going to come back to and then didn't, and stuff like that. So, oh, God, where do we want to start?
Can I just say, revisiting this series?
I know.
This series is so crazy to me. Just the fact that it exists. Going from Heroes of Olympus to this is one of the most exciting shifts I've ever seen an author make. The fact that there are so many people who haven't read Trials of Apollo blows my mind.
Yeah, my mom just finished reading through Heroes of Olympus for the first time. And she was like, I don't think I'm going to read Trials of Apollo. And I was like, no, Mom, come on.
No, it happens to everyone. Everyone has to fight through this. Someone did send in a question asking whether this is the best series yet.
Oh.
Magical Myths Podcast.
Thank you, Magical Myths Podcast. Yeah, if it was the first 3 books, my answer would be yes. If you're just going Hidden Oracle through Burning Maze, I would say yes.
It was set up to be the best series yet.
Yeah. That being said, because of the last 2 books, I think he realized what he was doing and he chickened out. So
it's really, like, re-listening to our episodes and thinking back on this series, I was like, these books are still so good. And if he had just, like, nailed the landing, yeah. Absolutely. You don't even really have to change much of Tyrant's Tomb or Tower of Nero.
Yeah.
For it to be that. All you had to do was, like, a different last, what is it, the third to last chapter, second to last chapter, the throne room scene.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff in Tower of Nero, I think again, going back, I think I talked about this in our episode, but it felt like he'd had this whole plan for how he thought it was going to end and go. And then he went too hard and wrote something even better and then didn't know what to do. Because the thing is, like, we know he can stick a landing. He wrote The Last Olympian. We know he can.
Tower of Nero ties together I feel like the Nero plotline so well. And in such a satisfying way. And it's really just the fact that has been paralleled with the Zeus story for the entire book series in a way that leaves you kind of like, that's it?
Yeah.
Well, connected to this conversation, there are a lot of questions connected to this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Justin asked, would you have wanted to have seen Apollo depose Zeus? Like, is that the ending that we actually wanted? And then from Spencer, we have, personally, I want Apollo to support some demigods in a revolution against Zeus. You know, maybe not doing it himself, but supporting the demigods in it. Which is something I was thinking about a lot while re-listening, was what do I feel like actually comes next for Apollo? Like, what do I want for him? And what do I think the series is suggesting he does next to actually make change?
Well, okay. Connecting it a little bit to the Golden Age stuff we were talking about the TV show, something I have been thinking about is the fact, I think I brought this point up as well, like in Greek mythology, there are two sons deposing their fathers and sort of assuming rule. First, it's Gaia and Uranus and their children, and Cronus deposes his father and takes over the rule. And then there's a prophecy that his son will depose him, so he eats all of his children, as we know from the Lightning Thief. But Zeus is squirreled away, and because his father was so cruel to his siblings, ends up deposing Cronus and the Titans. And then there's a prophecy made to Zeus that his son will also depose him, which is the reason why there's a few myths of Zeus trying not to have godly offspring, basically. Like, I think one of the myths of Thetis, Achilles' mom, is like, if you end up having a kid with a god, that kid's gonna, like, take over. And so they end up forcing her to marry a mortal so that won't happen, and she ends up giving birth to Achilles, who is super powerful, but mortal. There's, like, a whole thing about fathers deposing sons, is what I'm saying. And so it would be kind of interesting, because in a way that is something that is built into the mythology, that one day a son of Zeus will take over for him and depose him. Like, how different are Zeus, Kronos, and Uranus, you know? Like, I think that's the thing, is so it's sort of, there's an implied cycle. It would be basically an interesting thought experiment of, then Rick would have to make the decision of, does this change things or not? Or does this just put another face, another figurehead in place on a system? Yeah,
I feel like I didn't want Apollo to head up there and start his own revolution and take over, simply because I don't know that another god being in charge would be that satisfying. I feel like because in my head the gods, even though they're not the same generation, they are their own generation. Yeah. And then the demigods are the next generation. But I also don't really want to see the demigods in power.
Like, symbolically, right, this is a story about parents and cycles of abuse. And I think specifically Zeus, honestly, like in this particular part, like Zeus is here representative of a systemic cycle of abuse, not as like an individual abuser.
Yeah.
I think the reason why that wouldn't feel satisfying is that these are books that are political, in my opinion. And they're meant to inspire you to question and think about who's in power. And the fact is that you, the reader, and the real people living in our world, like the audience of this book, you cannot just march into a single person who's in charge's house and usurp them. That's just not something that's actually feasible in our world as a solution to this problem. So I think ending it that way would feel deeply unsatisfying, because it would take a very real problem and come up with essentially a magic solution for it that would never work in our world.
Yeah. Like, I feel like where I was going and where the books take you are that you need a fully, like, a systemic change.
Yeah.
It's not just about Meg getting rid of Nero. It's about her then creating a new system where she's taking care of all the kids that he basically kidnapped. I think Darian put it pretty well in an email that was sent.
This is Darian from Muses of Mythology, who guested on our Tyrants Tube episode.
Who said, at the end of PJO, Percy took the opportunity to force a positive change for the demigods. While future books demonstrated this did not have the impact he hoped, at the end of that series, readers knew the world was fundamentally different than where it had been at the start. While Apollo is certainly changed at the end of TOA, the world of the series isn't, not any more than it was at the end of The Last Olympian. To me, leaving Apollo on Olympus read like Riordan shying away from shifting the status quo.
Yeah, I think that really hits why the ending feels unsatisfying to me. It's like, he's gone through the journey, but we haven't, there has been no boon.
I think this also opens us up to a question that Ashley, who was also in an episode, sent in. She said, do you think Rick has left room at the end of this series for continuation? I personally don't imagine him writing another series of 5 books.
He's going to write 2 more series of 5.
I know that you said this, but I just don't see it happening. I see him continuing this, like, you know, he's got his trilogy that he's working on right now, plus maybe these, like, spin-off stories. But I'm like, I don't know if I see him, like, writing an entire new story that takes place here, unless it's, like, years from now he returns to it. Yeah. You know what would be awesome? Would be another series about the, you know, the change that happens, a revolution that starts again, and we get Alabaster back.
Alabaster! I do feel like this is as high as the stakes can go in terms of a big bad, unless you, like, bring back Chaos or something, or like Uranos.
He's set up a villain for us to take down, and so I see room for continuation. However, the end of this book series feels like a goodbye.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like Apollo making his rounds and letting us know where everyone is and saying, like, I'm gonna remember, I'm gonna make a change here. It feels like it's saying, okay, it's done. And it is very open-ended, which is unfortunate.
But this is the montage set to 1,000 Years by Christina Perry.
Never seen that movie, but I know, I am aware.
You've never seen Breaking Dawn Part 2?
I have only seen the first Twilight. I haven't seen any of the other Twilights.
Have you read them?
No.
That's funny.
Shall we move on to another topic now that we've covered Let's Kill Zeus?
Yeah.
I also got, while we were talking, I got a message from the great IDK. They asked, is Percy Jackson, like, do the gods change enough that Percy Jackson isn't ultimately a tragic story? Which it feels like we were answering here, but it feels like something to hold on to for the Riordanverse wrap-up. Sort of related, we have an email here from Hilka, who said, after finishing the Trials of Apollo series, I have a thought that I would like to share. It seems to me that the nature of the critiques against the gods have shifted between the different series. In PJO and Heroes of Olympus to some extent, our protagonists are quite critical of the gods, with the core of this critique being godhood itself, how the gods' position as immortal, all-powerful beings causes bad outcomes, such as the relations they have to their kids or heroes in general. In Trials of Apollo, this seems to have turned into a more personal critique of Zeus as an abuser, especially when he is paralleled with the other abusive antagonist, Nero. It is less about being a god and more about being an abusive person that also happens to be a god. Perhaps this shift could even tie in to Percy and Apollo's choices at the end of their series. Percy rejects godhood while Apollo's godhood is restored. Maybe because PJO is more critical of godhood than Trials of Apollo is. So, do you agree there is such a shift in how the gods' bad behavior is presented? Is it just a shift of perspective from a demigod to a god, or is there something more substantive to it? Finally, I was left wondering what such a shift would mean for the story, what could it add, and what could be lost. What's funny is that we talked a little bit about this in our wrap-up episode, and then I cut it because we didn't get anywhere with it. Because I was talking about how Zeus...
Our TV show wrap-up episode.
Yes, our TV show wrap-up, because I was talking about how the TV show also seems to be leaning into that same idea of, like, Zeus is at the core of all of it. Or Zeus is... You know, maybe not at the core of it because he has his dad behind him who has his dad behind him, but is at the head of this family and is making it worse. And I was wondering whether the TV show was going to end up going down that road also, the same one that Trials of Apollo goes down, just because that's where they're starting with it.
I do think Trials of Apollo does talk a lot about godhood, but I think it's within the context of, like, Apollo's own character arc. But I do think it reinforces all of the stuff that the Percy Jackson series sets up that we talked about, with how immortality really leaves you frozen. Like, I remember when I was rereading Trials of Apollo, I was thinking, there were a bunch of points where I was like, oh, this is why Phoebe, when I asked her way back, I forget what I asked you, but that was when you said that you felt like immortality meant you couldn't change things. You couldn't change.
Yeah.
I remember rereading Trials of Apollo. I remember you said that, and I was like, that's a cool idea. But it was only rereading Trials of Apollo where I was like, oh, that's where Phoebe... That's what has led Phoebe to that conclusion. It's all the stuff in this book and all the ways Apollo talks about mortality and immortality.
I don't remember it being this book that took me there. I think it was whatever book we were talking about.
Maybe. I don't know. I felt like it was more like you said it and I was like, that makes complete sense. But then when I was reading Trials of Apollo, I was like, oh, I see it now a lot more in the text here than I did in the original series.
In the original series, it feels like a conversation that's happening, but this one it's essential to this series because Apollo has to or has to not become a god at the end.
Yeah. And I do think that Zeus is an abusive figure in the immortal world, and that being like the main thing as opposed to godhood. I do feel like I don't think it's an either or situation. I think it is building on all of the stuff we've already established. And I think that's sort of shown in the fact that Apollo's own journey with his godliness is happening parallel to him realizing Zeus's abusiveness to him. And I think there's a lot of points in the series where they do get connected, like with Harpocrates, when he's realizing that he is sort of that he has been part of the systemic abuse, and he has been an active participant, also perpetuating it. And we sort of also see him grappling with the fact that a lot of the way Zeus operates is inherently tied not only to his, abusiveness, but also his godliness. Like, I think they're sort of bound together. It's just that now, because we have Apollo as our POV character, we're able to examine godhood on a much more personal level and kind of take it further than from Percy's perspective.
I think that this is kind of the tension that is one of several cores of Trials of Apollo, is the fact that we have established at this point in the story that part of the nature of being a god and being immortal and being all-powerful within this family, it has led to neglect and led to the abuse that we've seen in the series, including any perpetuated by Apollo. There's that side of it. And then there is the fact that at the end of this series, we know that Apollo is going to be offered that same choice that Percy had. Of like, you're going to become a god.
Apollo didn't really get a choice, though, did he?
He didn't. But, you spend the whole series assuming, like, at the end of it, Zeus is going to be like, welcome home, my son. Here's your godhood back. And you're sort of like, is he going to say yes or no? Which is not the way things played out, but that's where you expect it to head, is for him to be forgiven by his dad. And so that, I feel like, especially I feel that in The Burning Maze. It's that question of, like, if you can't make a change, you have Rhea in book 1 saying like a change needs to happen and then disappearing, and you have this entire series telling you change needs to happen. We need to stop this, and at the same time have that Apollo slowly regaining some of his powers, becoming more godly, and at the end that's where we're heading, and you're sort of like I feel like that's a toying with that idea that was set up in PJO. I would say that Trials of Apollo is just as critical of godhood, if not more critical, while at the same time painting Zeus as a core reason that this family doesn't function the way that it should. And I will say I do think that it refocuses a lot of its anger at Zeus specifically for several good reasons, but it also means that we're only interacting with godhood as a concept when it comes to Apollo. I don't know if that's a critique in any way. It's just the way that the book series works, because Apollo doesn't talk to many gods.
But he does talk to, like, Britomardus. I was thinking about Britomardus. She's interesting, too, because she behaves the way the gods behave, which I think in the book worked really well. But it would have been interesting to see her work in a different way, just because she's, like, not part of the traditional Olympian pantheon. But it is interesting too, because I do feel like this is the series where it's sort of established really made canon that it's like the worship that is the reason, like gods die when they are no longer worshipped and they are no longer remembered, and that creates immortality, which is interesting because in the Iliad and stuff, that's how Achilles achieves immortality, but not because he's still alive and kicking somewhere. It's just that like his story is being told.
Yeah, I was thinking about I'm about to sort of shift topics, but I was thinking about this re-listening to our episodes and thinking about other, we've talked about creating something to be remembered by as like a form of creating your own immortality, and we've talked about actual godhood. But then I was thinking about love as a force that can grant you immortality and just memory. Like I was thinking about the focus on memory that some of these books have. And just the idea of like someone loved you so much that your memory continues. Obviously, this came from me thinking about Jason a bit. But I was also thinking about the Sybil and that one guy. And the love that Apollo has for Meg and how her impact on him is going to hopefully live on for forever, long after she's gone. It was just, I was realizing as I was re-listening to our episodes, like how much more of a focus this series has on like the concept of love.
Yeah.
Because we have, like, we talked about each book at the beginning having like a focus on one of Apollo's past lovers, and then we also have all of the stuff that occurs in the Burning Maze and the conversations we had in the Tyrant's Tomb.
That was something I wrote down that was kind of related, was how, in my opinion, queer this book series is. But not just because there's a lot of characters that are gay, but also just like how a lot of the work it does that's related to it sort of undoing the perfect happily ever afters of the prior series, specifically like Piper and Jason as the prime example. Also, in a way, is sort of just like, I felt like it's kind of decentering this idea of the like very heteronormative happily ever after.
That thing that was just perpetuated so intensely by Heroes of Olympus.
Yeah, like even the Leo and Calypso thing. Like, it's really, like Leo and Calypso is another example where it's just like, okay, but like really are they doing what they want to do? And they're on a break at the end. They're breaking up, I swear.
Yeah, it's over.
It's done. But also like Reyna's arc, I think, and Reyna and Thalia together. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of that, which is really cool because I feel like it's nice if like to have an author have like on page non-cishet relationships, but like fundamentally as well, this book series is sort of doing a lot more than just being like, oh, and then they're gay over there, which I like. You know what I mean, though? There's a lot of books that are like, we have gay rep. There's two men making out over there. Goodbye, gays. Let us move on with the story. And, you know, it's interesting as well because I do feel like there are certain things that are fundamentally anti-establishment because the establishment is heteronormative, patriarchal, white supremacist, etc. And queerness has a lot of ties to being fundamentally anti-establishment.
This is reminding me of a thread, not to make this all about Black Sails, but it was talking about a conversation that was going on in the Black Sails circles of like people responding to Black Sails upset that it wasn't gay enough because like you expect romance to be at the core of a queer storyline, and that's not the case for Black Sails. It's very much about queerness, but it's not centering all on like a love story where they kiss at the end. And I would say the same thing about Trials of Apollo, is that it is about queerness in a lot of ways without having any kind of romance at the center of it.
Yeah.
Where should we go next?
Do you want to be sad?
I would love to be.
Speaking of the Burning Maze, we got a question that I opened first on our email, and I made a lot of noises reading it, and I asked Phoebe if she'd read it yet, and she said no. So I said, don't. I'm going to read it to you. Kelsey asked, this is something I think about a lot. Aside from getting Piper and Apollo to safety, what do you think were Jason's final thoughts? We know he's had 2 weeks to come to terms with his fate and how the truth had broken him. I think he spent a lot of the last 2 weeks of his life praying to his father to help him because he knows how Zeus stepped in when Thalia died and turned her into a tree, saving her. He spent his entire life trying to be the perfect son, demigod, and leader, and still Zeus has never acknowledged him and even threatened him in the end of Blood of Olympus. I do wonder if Jason felt abandoned by his father and realized it didn't matter how perfect he was. His father would never care for him the way he cared for Thalia. I wonder, as he lay dying, after telling Tempest to save the others, he thought about his father and had one last hope his father would help him like he did Thalia. And when he did... I'm sorry. This is so sad, Kelsey. I love it. His last thought was of him accepting he'd been abandoned by a father who never loved him. And then Kelsey goes on to say that it's not often that they find podcasts that love Jason as much as them. And to thank us for our good work. I made a lot of noises when I first read this email. You did not react audibly, though.
I wonder if he would worry that if he was saved, the prophecy wouldn't come true, and that would leave Piper still in danger.
That's a good point.
So he might have been even worried that his dad was going to help him.
Maybe he was praying to not be helped.
But I do think that he probably did feel abandoned by his dad.
Yeah.
Because of how much pride that he did have in being, like, Jupiter's son.
Do we think he was thinking about Thalia a lot, though?
Absolutely. I think if your dad has a track record for saving his children within your family, within
your family tree.
Yeah, I could see him believing that his dad might reach out in that moment, but I don't know that he would ask to be saved.
Do you think he knows your theory that he doomed himself by speaking out against Zeus?
I don't think he knows. I mean, I assume that moment probably rattled him a little bit because he had all of that faith in Zeus, and then Zeus looked at him like that. But that was less than a year ago for him, I think. So he's maybe just starting that journey of, like, understanding what his relationship with his dad really is. But that leads me to, oh, this is so obviously Zeus punishing his child. I mean, maybe it's because we spent this entire book in Apollo's head, and so we know what Zeus is capable of, and the lengths that he'll go to punish his own children. Even if that punishment is just, like, he saw what was happening and didn't save him. Even if he didn't cause it. Which, like, I'm still on the fence about. I don't personally think that he, like, designed all of this to lead to Jason's death or anything. But some part of it feels like a punishment by him. Like, the most realistic answer to that, to me, feels like he saw what was happening and chose not to help him. Like, he knew that he could and chose not to.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities where maybe he could have done something.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, like, in that moment with Caligula looking at Apollo with that same look on his face of, like, the face that his dad would make when he was punishing him. I could see that moment being the exact same moment that Jason is being punished by Zeus. So, like, Zeus is looking down on Jason and is choosing not to do anything at the same moment as Apollo sees that look on Caligula's face. That makes sense to me. But I don't think Jason would ever realize that.
Yeah, because he was probably saying, yeah, I think you're right. He would probably hope to die to fulfill the prophecy. So I guess his final thoughts were, they'll be safe, I guess. Probably. Good, they'll be safe.
I'm trying to remember exactly, like, what image he's absorbing at that moment.
He whispers something to Tempest. Tempest goes...
And then he stabs him again. And I just, he's dead at that point. So he doesn't even really get any kind of reassurance that, like, they're going to be safe.
Yeah. But he doesn't die alone.
It is so crazy that Jason is dead. Can we just... I can't believe we're having a conversation about that. Someone go back in time and tell Phoebe that, like, from 5 years ago or however long ago. Did this book come out 5 years ago? Go tell Phoebe from...
I have no idea.
10 years ago? Yeah, go tell Phoebe from 10 years ago, because 10 years ago was, like, House of Hades time. House of Hades and Blood of Olympus era.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, are you disappointed that, like, someone didn't die at the end of this book? Don't worry.
And she'll be like, oh, good, it's Leo, right?
Oh, boy, I hope it's Leo.
Anyway, that was a hard shift.
Yeah, but a useful one. I'm seeing many questions that I could bounce over to right now. Connected to Jason making his cameo here, Maddie asked, are there any character arcs that you're upset with the way that they ended? Which I wanted to use as a jumping off point to talk about which cameos we feel are effective and work best, and which we're left still wanting closure from. Because we brought back basically everybody. Except for Annabeth, for some reason.
Annabeth, well, she got her cameos in Magnus Chase, so I hear.
Not really. I mean, cameos, but not in the, the book-long kind of cameo.
So I was actually thinking about this a lot, like legacy and the next generation in this series. Mm-hmm. But when I was sort of re-listening through everything, I kept thinking about Meg and how interesting it was to me that, like, we're finally giving a child of Demeter their time to shine when it's a book series that's so about this. Like, I'm thinking about all of the moments of, like, Meg planting seeds and how that's all kind of related to this consistent theme in the series of, like, moving on to the next generation. How she literally is also kind of taking up the mantle of raising the next generation with, like, Nero's adopted kids. And so I was like, it's really neat that this is how we're using a child of Demeter. Like, it's not just a random lark. It really feels so thematically connected. I was also thinking about that one quote she has in The Dark Prophecy, where she says everything alive deserves to grow, and how it also is all sort of connected to the fact that everyone in this series is kind of given a chance, almost like a do-over or a restart to a lot of the arcs and themes that were introduced in Heroes of Olympus that didn't end in a satisfying way. So, like, thinking about it in that light, I honestly feel like all of the cameos really did serve that purpose in some way for their characters. Like, I liked that Frank finally dealt with the self-sacrifice. Like, he finally got his full reset, where he's no longer bound by a curse. He's, like, able to fully move on. Same thing with Hazel. Although she's sort of, like, I think that kind of happened in the last series, but we sort of got confirmation, at least, that she's left behind her old curse. Reyna getting to let go and move on. Piper getting to completely let go and move on. So all that being said, I think all of them do serve a really cool purpose in that way in the story. Like, there's so much of everybody just sort of getting the slate and getting their slate swiped clean in this series in a way that they did not in the last one. I think my favorites, Piper, Jason, and I do really like Frank.
Yeah.
And Reyna.
I would agree with those. Hazel, I don't know that I get that much from her.
Yeah.
Honestly. Which is too bad, because I mean, there wasn't much of her in Blood of Olympus.
Yeah,
But I think that she reached a satisfying enough conclusion in that way. Mm-hmm. But she didn't have, like, an arc in the way that some of these other characters have within their cameos.
Yeah.
Percy, if they'd left it at the first book, I'd be okay with it. It just really bothers me when he shows up after that and is like, I'm at school. That's probably one of my least favorites of this series. If we had left it at that with Percy saying, like, I'm actually done with this. I actually don't want to be in this book series, and so I'm not doing it. And then walking away, I would have been fine with that. I think it's really just the fact that he comes back to give us that happy end. I didn't want the happy ending. Like, I don't care that he's at school right now. What I care about is that, like, one of his closest friends died. And it's just the perfect example of the consequences of, like, what the gods are doing. And it's also, like, even if you walk away, it's still going to get you. Mm-hmm. And that Percy walking away isn't really going to help at all. It's the sort of feeling of, like, you're going to walk away and look what's going to happen after you walk away, which Percy would not be able to live with, in my opinion. And that's part of why it upsets me. That Percy showed up just to say, and I'm okay.
Listen, they had to have the montage.
And he didn't even need to see them. They're not friends.
They're not.
They didn't spend a whole book together. Apollo doesn't need to go see him. Apollo and Annabeth don't even know each other. Wait, actually, the like only times they've really interacted with Apollo, Annabeth wasn't there. That's so funny.
Oh my god, you're right.
She really doesn't know that guy.
She doesn't.
I feel like we have 2 more questions. Although, okay, one of these questions is from Max on Spotify, who said, how would you rank all of the books in the Camp Half-Blood trilogy from worst to best? This might be a Riordanverse question, like, for the last...
So we'd include, like, The Sun and the Star, Chalice of the Gods, and Wrath of the Triple Goddess in there?
That's kind of where I'm like, do we answer it now because we're talking about, like, each... I feel like I wouldn't include those, like, extra books. I would be including...
Yeah. Then we should do it now, if we're not going to include the extras.
From worst to best.
Worst to best. That actually might be easier, yeah. You know what? Nope, I'm sticking by it. Mark of Athena is my worst.
Okay, I'm going back and forth between Mark of Athena or
Blood of Olympus.
Blood of Olympus.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure which one. One makes me angrier than the other, but I think Mark of Athena might be worse in my head.
Blood of Olympus had chapters I really enjoyed. I really love Nico and Reyna.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, there are more scenes that I think of from Blood of Olympus that I love than I do scenes in Mark of Athena that I love.
Yeah.
Like, if I were to list scenes from Mark of Athena that I really, really like, I like it when Percy yells at Leo. I like it when they meet for the first time and Percy just yells at him. I like the ending. I like Annabeth's little quest at the end.
You like that they fall into Tartarus.
I like that they fall into Tartarus.
I like Mithras.
Of course, now we love Mithras. I like it when Percy and Jason fight. That's fun.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not like when I think of Blood of Olympus, I think of like, obviously the Nico and Reyna scenes, but I also think the opening chapters, which I love. I love those opening Jason chapters. And I love the concept of Percy having to face off against a underwater poison thing. Mm-hmm. The Annabeth and Piper scene with the temple. You know, it has more moments that like stick in my head. It's like, I liked this moment than Mark of Athena has. Mm. Okay, Mark of Athena, Blood of Olympus.
I might put Tyrant's Tomb.
That's what I was about to say. Was I feel like I might go Tyrant's Tomb.
It might be Tyrant's Tomb.
Yeah, let's go Tyrant's Tomb.
Are you writing them down?
I am.
Good.
And then, personally, I am not a huge fan of The Dark Prophecy, but I know it's your favorite book ever. So I think this is where our ranking might... Like, my ranking might put The Dark Prophecy here. Oh,
no. My ranking... You know what? The Hidden Oracle.
Okay. You can put that there.
Because the thing with the Hidden Oracle is it's necessary setup, but I'm not obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. You know? I think it's Lost Hero next.
I think I might like the Hidden Oracle more than the Lost Hero.
Oh, okay.
And I might like Tower of Nero more than the Lost Hero.
I think the first time I read the Lost Hero, I really liked it.
I really like the Lost Hero. All of these books I really like.
Yeah, no, I should be clear. The only ones I really don't like are the bottom two.
Maybe we both put this all together and then we present it to each other.
Yeah, maybe. All right, I have my ranking. Should we go from number one and see where we differ?
From the worst or from best?
From best.
Okay.
Number one, say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Battle of the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Number 2, I know is different.
Mine's The Titan's Curse.
Mine's Dark Prophecy.
That's crazy.
Number 3, we might have the same 3.
No, we might not.
Okay, what's yours?
The Last Olympian.
Oh, yeah, we don't. Mine's The Burning Maze.
See, I'm stuck here because I put The Burning Maze at number 4. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it for a while. I don't know which one I like more. I don't know. I feel like despite its flaws, The Last Olympian is a great conclusion.
Yeah.
But The Burning Maze is just such a feat.
I know. Well, I put Last Olympian as number 5, so it made my top 5.
Yeah. My number 5 was Sea of Monsters.
Really? Okay, so if you're following at home, Phoebe's top 5 is, in order,
Battle of the Labyrinth, The Titan's Curse, The Last Olympian, The Burning Maze, and Sea of Monsters.
Mine is Battle of the Labyrinth, Dark Prophecy, Burning Maze, Titan's Curse, The Last Olympian.
Now I'm feeling like I should switch The Burning Maze and The Last Olympian. Now that I said it out loud, I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel right, though.
All right, so you can switch it.
Battle of the Labyrinth, The Titan's Curse, Burning Maze, The Last Olympian, Sea of Monsters. That feels much better coming out of my mouth.
You know, I'm going to star the ones that we agree on.
Number 6.
Lightning Thief.
Yeah, The Lightning Thief.
Oh, we agree? Hey!
Yeah.
7.
Son of Neptune.
Mine's House of Hades. Which, okay, so we each put our top Heroes of Olympus book in number 7.
Yes.
Which is damning, honestly.
It's in the top half.
Mm-hmm. 8, mine's Sea of Monsters.
Mine's House of Hades.
9, Son of Neptune.
Tower of Nero.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, Okay, sorry. I'm realizing that we did both say Tyrant's Tomb was the third worst, but I'm realizing I had meant to say Tower of Nero.
I think I really like Tower of Nero. Its flaws might hurt it more, but I like what's there in Tower of Nero more. Like, I really like the end of Tyrant's Tomb.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know that I like, have very strong feelings about the rest of Tyrant's Tomb.
10. Lost Hero.
Hidden Oracle.
11, Tyrant's Tomb.
I put the Lost Hero at 11.
12 is Hidden Oracle.
12 is the Dark Prophecy.
Oh no. Our biggest disagreement. Why don't you like the Dark... Oh, it's Leo and Calypso. You said already. Okay.
There are multiple reasons.
13 is Tower of Nero.
My 13 is Tyrant's Tomb.
I feel like Tower of Nero would be higher for me if he just felt like he was pulling almost all the punches.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But I think I'm satisfied enough with, like, what happened with Meg's storyline. It's like everything but the ending is a good time to me. Even if I also agreed with what Ashley said in our episode about, like, the Python stuff not quite clicking.
Yeah.
Also true.
I also feel like, I don't know, like the troglodytes, there's a lot of stuff I always forget the troglodytes are in that.
I
know. Like, I just felt like we spent a lot of time doing stuff that wasn't that important to the story. Like, it didn't feel very focused, you know? Like, I wish I'd done more with Rachel. There's a lot of potential, but...
I still think I enjoy myself reading it more than I do. All you're tempting me to do is move the Hidden Oracle up more.
Okay, and then we agree on the final two, right? 14, Blood of Olympus.
15, Mark of Athena.
Controversial, I feel like, to those listening, that we think Mark of Athena is worse than Blood of Olympus. But it is. I feel like the way I was ranking them, I was trying to think of them as whole books first. So if it was a book where I liked certain storylines and certain arcs, but not other things, it went lower on the list than books I thought were just well-constructed books.
I went the opposite and went with my heart and went with what feels good. It doesn't matter if it, we're going, I guess I'm in my head not going best to worst, but more like favorite to least favorite, which are two different things.
Well, mine are one and the same because I don't like things that are bad.
But none of this is bad.
No, I feel like they kind of go hand in hand to me.
I think that I was going to say, like, despite being a dramaturg, I think this, but I think that it's actually because of the dramaturg brain, I'll watch things or read things that, like, do not fit together and do not work. But because there's potential there, and I'm excited by the potential, I'm like, I'm enjoying myself a lot.
That makes sense. Arguably one of our biggest differences in opinion over a movie is The Rise of Skywalker. I think for similar...
I have so much fun watching that movie. It's awful.
I think for similar reasons, because I'm sitting there like, none of this makes sense. The world building's terrible. The puppet strings are so obvious. I hate it. It's not good. And I hate everything. And like Phoebe, you saw the flaws, but you were like, I'm obsessed. I'm having the best time. And I was having
I'm not obsessed. I hate that movie.
Sorry. Okay.
No, like this isn't comparable because I don't like that movie.
Right, but I'm just saying, like,
you're like, it's more like me absolutely loving Batman vs Superman.
Right.
Most people do not like Batman vs Superman. I love Batman vs Superman, and I see all of its flaws so clearly.
I'm trying to think if there's anything flawed I love. I mean, I definitely love things that are flawed, but I don't know if there's anything I love where I'm like, this is the most flawed thing ever, but I still love it.
Supernatural.
No, Phoebe, if you remember, I stopped midway through season 7 because I couldn't take it.
As if seasons 1 through 5 were perfect.
No, but they were great. They told a perfect story.
You're misremembering.
Oh my god. You know what? The show Rain. You can't say anything to me about Rain. I'll say I know. Still like it.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about the way that I will consume media. I'll bring up the fact that I love the deeply flawed piece of media. And then they go, but Phoebe. And they start pointing out things I already know. Anyway, what if I move to the Dark Prophecy down to 13?
I'll kill you.
I'm tempted looking at my list right now.
The Dark Dark Prophecy is objectively a great book. What's wrong with you? Why don't you like it? What's the disparity? Is it just that you're not an Oracle of Trophonius stan?
Oh, I like that scene, though.
But just...
There's no other scene in the Dark Prophecy that I love.
Oh. See, I love Bride of Martis. I love Emmy and Joe. I love all... Okay, I'm sorry. Apollo murdering Commodus?
I totally forgot those flashbacks existed. I'll leave it where it is.
The Agamethus? But come on. That Oracle scene goes the hardest in this series, I would argue, in terms of a character confronting a god.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll leave it where it is. And then we'll see how maybe in our Riordanverse wrap-up we'll include all of those extra books. You know, we'll put like Chalice of the Gods, or we'll put, you know, we'll do all of the books. Mm. Or do we go crazy and we also sort in episodes of the TV show and movies?
No. Well, we know where the movies are going.
In 5th. Thank you all for listening to Monster Donut. Next time, we will be covering The Sun and the Star. Also, exciting update, there is officially Himbo Juice merch in the merch shop. So if you would like to check it out, or see any of the other merch that we have up there, you can find the link to that in the description of this episode or in our link tree, which is linked on all of our social media. We are at PJOpod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. In that link tree, you can also find our Patreon, where we've got cut content from these episodes, we've got bonus episodes, we've got art previews, we've got heads up for any upcoming interviews that we're having, and then over there we'll also have a lot of our season 2 content. You know, reacting to trailers, reacting to casting news, that sort of stuff will all go up on Patreon. So if you'd like to join us over there, you can head over to patreon.com/monsterdonutpodcast. And while we're talking about it, thank you to our patrons: Roman Consul, Latino Kaya, Patty VCK, Bethany from Public Works, Sydney Pox, Joke, Reina Avila Ramirez Arellano, Charlie McNeil, Bronte Lebeau, Ethan Not Nakamura, The Damn Meme Page, Kels, Mason Bowman, Casey Cassidy, Busy Cat, Natalia Sanchez, Sally Mae, Melissa Rounds, Oat Milk, Samantha Hardgrove, Alana, Elena, Melanie Valdez, Pamela Ion, The Kid on Her Own, Marie Hunter, Grace Hunker, Kaylee, and Mana Munchen. Thank you all so much for being with us. We really, really appreciate it. And again, if you'd like to join them, you can find the link in our link tree or in the description of this episode. If you'd like to support us non-monetarily, it is always helpful to leave a review or to rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to us right now. And I think that is all. I'll see you next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
The Real Housewives is a guilty pleasure for most, but if you're looking to not feel guilty about that pleasure, tune in to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino, where I break down all the messy moments and behind-the-scenes antics of Bravo's popular franchise. And on Everything Iconic, I also interview celebrity guests like Kelly Ripa, Keke Palmer, Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and more about their guilty pleasures, their past work, and so much more. So if you're pop culture obsessed and find yourself watching way too much reality TV like me, tune into Everything Iconic with Danny Pellegrino, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.